All right, guys. It looks like we've got most everyone who registered here. So fantastic. Let's go ahead and jump right in, and we'll admit anybody that needs to be admitted here as the webinar goes on. But thank you all for signing up and joining us here for the AI-powered LSA Domination, how to rank #1 and stay there. You guys are in for an absolute treat today. With us, we have two absolute experts in their fields with us to be able to go through this presentation today. First, on the LSA side, Thomas Glasgow from 1122 Marketing is absolutely the best and most predominant LSA practitioner in our space today. Absolutely fantastic. Just really knows his stuff. So you guys are in for a treat as he goes through his part of the presentation today. And then, of course, Gary Falkowitz is the godfather of intake within our space. Absolutely long-term friend of mine, business partner, just really fantastic, fantastic person, but the absolute most knowledgeable intake and conversion expert within our space here. So one of the things that I love about both Thomas and Gary, though, is that neither of them kind of step out of their lanes. If you were to ask Thomas, like, how do I do this for SEO, or how do I do this for even AdWords? You know, he's going to refer you to somebody else and say, you know, I am the expert in LSA. I wake up every morning and look at how I'm going to handle LSAs, you know, the best for my clients today. And same thing with Gary. If you were to approach him and say, well, what about marketing, or what about, you know, law firm operations outside of intake? He's going to say, you know, that's not what I do. I focus 100% of my time on conversion. And so what you're going to get from these guys today is absolute laser focus on their specialties. And they are absolutely fantastic at it. So without any further ado, Thomas, I'm going to pass it to you here to be able to start going through the presentation on your LSA portion of the webinar here today.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. Hey, everyone. So yeah, today we are talking about what might be the most competitive space on all the internet for attorneys, and that is the coveted LSA section, right? And so maybe you've had experience with LSAs before. Maybe you were an early adopter 4 or 5 years ago when these things opened up for attorneys. And if you're like a lot of folks, you were signing gobs and gobs of cases at the best cost of acquisition you've ever seen. And then at some point, it might have started drying up for you, right? Now maybe you've kind of thrown up your hands. You're like, I don't know what to do at this point. So we're going to talk about, can you use AI to create a repeatable and predictable source of cases using LSAs? Okay. So we're going to ask 2 important questions today. The first question is, what does Google want? And the second is, how can we give Google what it wants? And these are really basic questions, but they're so foundational to running a successful LSA campaign. And so I know people are mad at Google. I know people are upset with them, and they're viewed as a tyrant and this big evil player in the space, right? But the way to have success with Google is not just to be pissed off at them. It's to figure out what they want and then give it to them, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. But first, just to make sure we're all on the same page, what are local service ads? LSAs are the things that appear at the very top of the search engine results on Google when people are searching for high intent keywords like DUI lawyer near me or personal injury attorney, Charlotte, North Carolina, right? They're predominantly based or focused on driving in phone calls. They're real bottom funnel keywords that they appear for, and they're ready to hire individuals. And that's in part, or not in part, but largely what makes it such a competitive space online. So back to our questions. First question we're gonna want to ask is, the first part of the question is, what does Google want? Google wants to make money. This is incredibly obvious, but it's really important to think about with LSAs because it's really nuanced. So with PPC campaigns, Google, and this is generalizing, but you could tell Google, hey, I got $1 million budget this month, please spend it. Google's gonna figure out how to take your $1 million bucks, right? They're gonna figure out how to take your money. But with LSAs, it's different. You can put into the system, we got $1 million budget this month, please spend it. And if you're not giving Google the signs that you provide the searcher experience that they want to provide, they'll spend $0 and send you 0 leads. So Google wants to make money, but on LSAs, they're not willing to do it at the expense of the searcher experience. So It's really important to keep this in mind. So we'll go to the second one. And the second thing that also obvious, but they want their searchers to be happy. Now, this is really important, particularly really this week as Google's all this ad news is coming out with all the antitrust stuff, right? Like Google has to have searchers that are happier. They're going to be going to other platforms, right? ChatGPT is an AI, like all these things are coming in to provide real competition for Google in terms of the people actually are going to use their product in the future. And if people don't like using LSAs, if they don't have a great experience with them, they're going to go off the platform and Google will lose the opportunity to monetize them. So with LSAs in particular, Google's really focused on making sure that their users have a fantastic search experience. So how do we design an LSA system that gives Google what they want? Well, we just got to begin with the end in mind, right? So the two questions are, how can we help Google make more money? Don't throw tomatoes at me, but that is the goal, right? We want Google to make money. And how do we help Google provide a great searcher experience? So let's look at this concept that I call Google Jail. So Google Jail is this idea, and you go to the next slide. Thanks, Chris. It's this idea that if you're not appearing, you might be giving Google everything they want in terms of like a perfect profile setup, your bid strategy is wonderful, but for whatever reason, Google doesn't trust your business enough to rank you above all these other high-performing firms that they're already comfortable with and ranking. And so you get stuck in what I call Google Jail. And so we need to look at what do we do to get out of Google Jail, right? So you can do all the basic things, which I would imagine a lot of you guys are very familiar with, right? You need your profile fully verified. You need good geo-targeting. You need a good bid strategy. You need to be driving lots of reviews into your Google business profile. You need a really great cadence of reviews coming in. You want to be marking the leads as booked. You want to complete that lead feedback survey, right? There's all these things that I would categorize in the basic setup, right? And this is most of what people talk about in LSA space is like, do these things right. And then from there, it's just kind of a crapshoot. And so that's what we're going to challenge today is like, what can we do to beyond those basics, right? And so we want to look at what impacts ad rank. And Google in their documentation used to have some kind of ambiguous things, and all that changed this week. And we'll talk about that in a second. But it used to be you had to dive through and kind of read between the lines, right? So in their documentation on what impacts ad rank, they had this to say. They said, how likely your ad is to result in a lead, which is based on this ambiguous phrase, a number of factors, right? Including your responsiveness. Missed calls may negatively impact your responsiveness. So they tell us explicitly, answer the phone, right? They tell us that really clearly, but then they also have all these other factors, which they don't list all of necessarily, right? So you can go to the next one, Chris. This one's even more ambiguous. They talk about profile quality being a factor that impacts ad rank. And then they say any other of things that impact profile quality, they say any other information about your business that may influence user preferences, right? This is an incredibly vague, intentionally ambiguous statement by Google. And so what happened was a couple days ago, they just straight up came out and made it more explicit, right? They said, we can use your phone calls and message conversations however the heck we want, right? And so they essentially just came out and said what they've always been doing, but now they're making it real clear. We're recording every call, and we are using everything that happens inside of that phone call as data to determine if you're providing the searcher experience that we want, right? And so this is, it's not really a shift. They've been doing this for a long time, but now it's much more out in the open. You go to the next one, Chris. So Google is recording every call. And so I'll submit that what happens during that call is the most important factor now that influences your ad rank on LSA, right? This isn't some crazy tinfoil hat Google is watching theory anymore. Like they are straight up telling you we're doing this, right? And so in order to give Google what we want or what they want, we need to make sure that we're doing the right things during the phone calls that they're listening to, right? And so Google knows if you answer that phone quickly. The second someone calls you from your ad, they're tracking how long it takes to answer the phone. They know if it takes 5 seconds or if it took 45 seconds, right? They know if that intake was really smooth. They know if the intake agent was understandable. They know if they had a good command of the English language, right? They understand what's happening in that conversation. They know if a fee agreement or a retainer agreement was sent out, right? Because they're listening to the call. They understand if you say, hey, we're sending you an agreement. We can't wait to have you as a client. They know based on the conversation if that lead was qualified, right? They can hear everything that we're talking about. And so in order to give them what we want, we need to have a set of protocols, right? That on every LSA call, we do these things. This is what Google wants. And so these are the protocols we use to make sure that on every call that comes in from an LSA, we give Google what they want. So the first one, every LSA call needs to be answered in under 15 seconds, okay? And I think this is obvious, but let me give you an example of why it's so important. Recently, I was looking for someone to help with some lawn care, and I called literally the top 5 results on Google, and not a single one of them answered the phone. And so I then went into their website and sent them a couple messages saying like, hey, can you help or whatever, to two sites, the only 2 that actually had a message feature on the site. And neither of those folks responded either. And so I have given up using Google as my place to search for lawn care. So I posted in the local Facebook group, and I called a couple signs that were in neighbors' front yards. And I even called the truck that drove by, with their number on it. So they've lost me as a consumer when it comes to searching for lawn care. I'm not going to do it, right? It was a terrible experience because they put bad results in front of me that didn't answer the phone. And so they know this. And so if you don't answer that phone quickly, people are going to do the same thing with your service industry, right? They'll stop turning to Google for attorneys. And so answering that call incredibly fast is really important to Google. They want to provide that really fast response for their searchers. All right, so that's the first one. The second thing, and this is what would likely be the largest change in process for a lot of folks on the call today, is on an LSA call, we don't want to reject that lead on the call that Google's listening to, okay? So let me give you an example of this. Let's say someone calls in from your LSA and they search auto accident lawyer near me, and they call you, and your intake team answers the phone, or someone answers the phone, and they quickly determine it's property damage only. And you don't want property damage only cases, right? There's got to be injuries. And so they just turn it down, okay? So let me tell you what just happened. Google ranked you for a query that we said we wanted to rank for. They ranked you for auto accident lawyer. They drove a lead to your business, and then they hear you tell that lead you can't help them. And now we're creating this really negative association between what we're telling them, which is we want to rank for auto accident lawyer, versus what they're actually hearing happen, right? So over time, they're going to start to think you don't really want these cases because you keep turning them down. And so what we want to do is we want to protect the system from hearing that happen. So in an instance like this, we would want to just say, hey, we're going to review this information. Then you can call them back and turn it down offline when Google's not listening. But we don't want Google to hear something that's going to cause a lot of dissonance that it won't know how to process, right? So that's the second one. The third thing is we want to keep calls over 30 seconds. Calls shorter than 30 seconds, Google will not charge you for. We want Google to make money when they rank you, right? So if you are hanging up that phone really fast because it's unqualified or something like that, Google can't charge you for it. And over time, they're going to stop ranking you because they can't monetize that opportunity, right? And so they're going to put someone else in your place that they're going to be able to bill for that lead. And so it's really important, as unpalatable as it is sometimes, because the promise of the LSA platform, right, is that you only pay for qualified leads. And we all know with auto disputing and things like that, that's just not the reality of the platform anymore, right? You're going to have some junk leads in there that you have to pay for. And so it's sometimes hard to stomach, but if you want to rank well on LSAs, there is a little bit of that pay to play element sometimes, and this elongating the calls past 30 seconds is an important part of that. The fourth thing and our final thing in our intake protocols is we want to conduct as full of an intake as reasonable. So if we stick with the auto accident property damage example, instead of just hearing it's property damage only, grabbing a phone number, and then saying, we'll call you back. If you ask a couple clarifying questions that match the search query, it allows the AI to understand that it made a good match, right? So if we say, hey, sorry to hear you were in an accident. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? Where did it happen? What auto body shop are you at? How much is it going to cost? It allows the AI to hear us talk about an auto accident to reinforce that it made a good match with the search query that originated the call. And so you don't need to, and Gary, I'll talk more about, this sort of thing. I'll stay in my lane, but like, we don't need to drag this thing out, but we do want, for the benefit of the AI, to reinforce and train it in this manner. Okay. So those are
quickly on that. So what I'm hearing you say, just in layman's terms, is that you want every call that you receive from LSAs to sound like it's a good call and something that's wanted by your firm.
The way I define it is we want Google to think we are moving that call forward in a meaningful direction. So we don't want to provide false hope to a caller or anything like that, but for the AI's benefit, we don't want Google to just hear it straight up rejected if it comes from a query that we would want to rank for. So if you were running, let's say you're a DUI lawyer and you only want DUIs, and someone called you about family law, it would be likely, you could assume that like that's okay. Like you don't need to follow this protocol. But if it looks, smells, or tastes like a case type that you want and would have likely been generated from a search query that you want to rank for, yeah, you want to follow that protocol every time.
Perfect.
Yep. And so this is where I'll pass it off back to Chris here. But I mean, essentially using AI can allow you to do all these things, right? This is complicated. There's a lot going on here. And we don't want to send the wrong signals to Google. So a solution like CaptureNow can be a great solution for helping give Google what it wants to run a successful LSA campaign.
Thomas, that's fantastic, man. Appreciate all that helpful information. We did see a huge spike in registrations here this week. It must be due to that news for the LSA changes that came out. So absolutely fantastic job. Really appreciate your time and knowledge in going through this. So
for sure. Thanks.
As it related to those intake protocols there's again nobody better in the industry than Gary Falkowitz from CaptureNow to be able to go through those intake protocols, and I know he's got a lot to say here as it relates to that, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Gary Falkowitz from CaptureNow to take this next part of the webinar.
Yeah, awesome. And good news, everybody. I'm from New York, so I speak quickly, so I may have a lot to say, but I'll get it out as fast as possible. Thomas, great job. I think it's what everyone needs to understand right now, and if you don't already, is that if you're not paying Google, Google doesn't want you as a client. So instead of spending all your time trying to figure out ways why you shouldn't be charged with leads, you probably should be spending time figuring out ways to maximize the return of your investment with Google. And that being said, Chris, thank you very much for the introduction before. Really appreciate and honored to be in front of all these folks to talk about intake. This has been my world now for 20 years. Actually, this is the book, The Complete Guide to Law Firm Intake. I wrote it. I am shoulder deep in intake all day, every day. But let's talk about specifically something related to what Thomas talked about. I'm going to throw in some random intake nuggets that I hope you bring back to your firm to help you out. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to remove the issues that are slowing us down or stopping us from meeting our potential, right? So let's say, we got the marketing working, and Thomas is really focusing on our LSAs and making sure that the phone calls are coming in or the digital leads are coming in. The problem right now that most of the industry is facing is the resources that they have in place, whether they're internal resources or external resources. But the problems are really the same problems that everybody faces, which is either we're missing calls, we're slow to respond to calls, We may have the wrong people picking up the calls or making the phone calls. We have limited resources, so we end up having some of our intake folks doing reception work or doing document review work or vice versa, and no one's really focused or dedicated on intake. And all of a sudden, we have to look in the mirror and realize, shucks, maybe we're not doing great at intake because we didn't really put the program together. And let me explain to you how important speed is in this game. Okay, 78% of legal leads hire the first firm they speak with. This is in a competitive environment. Now, you might be wondering, yeah, but Gary, don't they care about other things other than speed or how quickly we pick up the phone call? And let me be very direct with you. No, they don't. There's never been, I have listened to thousands of calls. And do you know how many times a claimant has asked, hey, by the way, what law school did Mr. Lawyer go to? 0. It's never been asked on a phone call, on an intake call. It's not important. What's important is that their problems are trying to be resolved or at least listened to as fast as possible. Speed. Speed is the most important trait that your law firm can possess at intake. And if you don't have that speed, what you're doing is you're creating a bottleneck. And let's talk about that bottleneck for a moment. This is where most of the issues present themselves at intake. Nights, overflow, and weekend, right? Some of us are really confident in the intake people we have internally, right? We put a lot of hours and time and years into training these folks. They know our practice areas. They know our criteria. They know when to escalate. They know what's a case. They know what's not a case. They know who our referral partners are. They know all of it, right? We're really proud of them. The problem is they only work 9 to 5 sometimes, and you're giving them other responsibilities, or they take lunch breaks, or they're just human beings, and they have other things they got to do. What about all the other times when leads come into our firm? We can't say we're a 9 to 5 business, right? Throw that away. That if we are 24/7, 365, whether we like it or not, which means we need to have a solution that's available 24/7, 365. And if we have any delayed responses to LSA, delayed responses to web leads, that's going to slow us down. That's going to cause a bottleneck. There are law firms that are clients of ours that we look, when they open up their hood and we get to do an audit on what's going on, you'd be surprised that they thought responding to a digital lead 45 minutes after the lead came in is pretty good. Guys, if you're not responding same minute, you're in trouble. If you're not responding to an inbound phone call on the first ring, you're in trouble. How many times do all of us want to make a dinner reservation, right? We call up one of our favorite Italian restaurants, right? It starts to ring twice, ring 3 times, ring 4 times, hang up, and go find second Italian restaurant. We're not waiting on one Italian restaurant, and we're not waiting on one law firm. If that firm does not pick up on the first ring, we might as well just say, call our competitors across the street. They'll be faster, right? So speed matters. Poor CRM integration. If we don't have a surefire way to ensure that leads are getting into our CRM, then all we have is cracks in the system and leads that we're losing. Lack of reliable processes, missed calls, poor call handling. Let me talk about this for a moment, okay? Because I owned a call center. Go back for one sec, Chris. I want to stick with that for one moment. I owned a call center. Thankfully, we were able to get out. We were acquired a very, very successful call center known as Intake Conversion Experts. We signed more than 100,000 cases on behalf of law firms nationwide. But let me tell you something. I did the management of the intake staff. I did the interviewing of the intake staff. So I was very proud of the people that we hired. And I got to tell you, I'm not proud to realize what many of them ended up becoming. And what they became was untrustworthy. They became untrustworthy. My call center representatives became untrustworthy. We had to hire and fire and hire and fire over and over and over again because they couldn't meet the basic standards I needed them to meet for our clients, for our law firms. What do you think is going on when you're outsourcing any phone calls to an outsourced call center? You have no idea what they're trained in. You have no idea how many law firms they're picking up calls for. I can't tell you how many times they pick up a call for law firm A, but they introduce themselves as law firm B. That's happening. I promise you that's happening. Or when they put someone on hold, or it takes 12 rings to pick up, or they ask someone to repeat themselves, or they want to watch a movie in the background, so they say, hold on, heard that one too. This is what happens when we outsource our calls to a group of folks that we don't get to manage or train. Quite frankly, it's the reason why we created CaptureNow, right? So we wanted to create something that was a lot more reassuring, a lot more reliable for our firms, for firms nationwide. I use it myself. It is a 24/7 AI virtual assistant built by legal intake experts, right? So I was able to provide to it all of my knowledge, all of my experience, all the calls that I've heard and I've critiqued over the years, and I gave recommendations. This is how we should answer. This is what we should respond. And by the way, let me give you a little secret. That's not really a secret. It's much smarter than me. It's much smarter than all of us. It's unbelievably valuable, right? And it's always on. You never have to worry about, hey, is it having a bad day or is it busy with another firm? No. We have instant integration. It's conversational. And by the way, I'm going to do a live demo momentarily. And no one should ever do a live demo on a webinar, but I'm going to do it anyway. So we'll see what happens. It is dependable. It is less expensive. It's customizable. So it answers for your firm. 20 years of intake rolled into one solution. By the way, it's inbound and outbound. Now, you might be saying to yourself, because Thomas, I wrote it down when you said it, AI is complicated, right? Here's the thing. AI is complicated. And I'm not going to take credit over here to tell you that I somehow made it easy for everybody. What I am going to take credit and pride in is that we created a solution so that you don't have to worry about how complicated AI is anymore, right? This is something all firms, if you're working with an outsourced call center where people that you have not trained and that you are not managing on a daily basis, if your firm is working with those types of people, I need you to stop what you're doing, reconsider that today, whether it's CaptureNow or another product. That old school mentality of random strangers picking up calls from my firm is dead. It's over. It's gone. You got to move on. Your competitors are moving on. There's no more gambling on a group of folks that you can't manage. Now, let's talk about the benefits of CaptureNow. It is 24/7, 365 coverage, instant entry into your CRM. It's conversational, so it's not the old school mechanical logic-based question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. No. It actually repeats a caller's name when it understands, when it hears the name. It has compassion. It never misses the chance to say, I'm sorry to hear about that. It's unbelievable. And it boosts conversions, both from a marketing standpoint. When I say conversion from a marketing standpoint, what we're really talking about is that we can convert someone who reached out into a lead, and also from the intake standpoint, where you convert an intake into a signed client. So it's been a tremendous value add for our clients. I'll let you in another secret. It's not just for legal. It's not just for legal. You have doctors' offices. You have chiropractors. You have, I can't think of anything at the moment, but other offices outside of legal that are currently using products like CaptureNow, because people are starting to say, why are we gambling? Let's remove the wait time. Let's remove the ring time. Let's remove the gamble. Let's remove this idea that someone that I can't control is picking up my phone calls from money that I spent to make ring. And that's why we created CaptureNow. So real world use cases in the legal industry. There's an inbound phone response for nights, overflow, and weekends. We have law firms using it for their primary intake, right? And if I had to look into the future for this product, and I love intake. I work with intake firms throughout the country, hundreds of firms throughout the country, some of the largest, some of the smallest, solo practitioners. But and I love my intake people. I love training them. I love putting them in the best position to succeed. But if I were to look into the future, within 3 to 5 years, this will take over 75% of intake departments. That is AI intake. Law firms are using it for high volume inbound solutions. Right back in the day, when you ran a high volume campaign, maybe it's for employment or a mass tort or Social Security, your biggest concern was, oh my God, am I going to pick up all these calls? How am I going to have people to pick up all these calls? Not a concern anymore. And we're showing that it's unbelievably resilient. Immediate call to web leads. We just talked about it a moment ago. There's no more, hey, if you're within 5 to 7 minutes of responding to a web lead, you're 9 times more likely to convert it. No more of that. No more of that. Think about how we are as human beings right now. I want to give a quick story, and it's not to the point, but it's very related. Everyone, most people know about my tragedy. My family suffered the worst tragedy you could ever imagine. And there's not a webinar, not a call, not a person I meet that doesn't hear about it. My son, Ethan, was killed by a drunk driver almost 2 years ago to the day. Okay. Deep down, I'm ripping my soul apart. You know, outward, I'm teaching you about intake, but deep down, I'm broken. But there's so much I could teach you about Ethan. He was a man amongst men. He was just a tremendous human being. But I want to share one quick story with you. One morning, I woke Ethan up for school. He said, "Dad, I want to go see that new Scream movie." This is 2 years ago. He said, "I want to go see it in the movie theater." I said, "Absolutely. I love going to movies with my kids." I said, "Let me know based on your tennis schedule what day looks good." He said, "Okay, you got it." Thursday morning, I woke him up for school and I said, "You never told me. I know your schedule is crazy this weekend. When do you want to go see the movie?" He said, "No, I already saw it." Thinking, "No, you've been home the last few nights. You didn't go to the theater. What do you mean you saw it?" He goes, I spent a couple hours last night trying to find it on my phone, on the web. Someone recorded it, and I watched the whole movie. I said, "Wow, well, let's remove the illegality aspect of that. Let's just talk about the movie itself. The quality of it must have been awful." He said, "It was terrible. I could see someone's head and people making noises and there's popcorn and soda." I said, "Ethan, let's go see the movie this weekend then, man. We'll recline back. We'll get a big tub of popcorn." There's no doubt I already saw it. Now, here's the thing. That was just an example by Ethan of showing all of us about instant gratification. When we want something, we want it now. We're not willing to wait. And the same thing goes when we call somebody or if we send a digital web lead. Think about your digital web leads. When I submit a digital web lead, I'm not waiting by my computer for 10 minutes for someone to call me back. I want them to call me right now. I'm on break or I have a minute right now. With CaptureNow, you can do that. You can make sure the call goes out immediately after that web lead comes in. We have law firms that are using it as a qualification tool. For example, employment cases. When law firms that do employment cases get a lot of potential leads that have no value. So they're not, but they have their team picking up every call, speaking for 10 or 15 minutes, getting summaries, yet only 5% of the leads have any value. Why wouldn't you put in a CaptureNow? Gets a summary for every single phone call, has a conversation, and then the one that either qualifies or the one that meets certain basic criteria can either get warm transferred to a live person, or you can call that summary, that claim it back after you review the summary. We also have one of our law firms is using it as an existing client response, where they get a tremendous number of inbound phone calls from their existing clientele, and they just don't have the paralegals or staff or resources to pick up all these calls. And if they're all going to voicemail, with CaptureNow, what the phone system could do is pick up the call, recognize the existing client, get some information about the reason for the call, put that information, integrate that into the client's file, and all of a sudden everybody's happy. And lastly, anticipated long calls, right? Some law firms say, listen, medical malpractice calls could take 45 minutes and they're not even definite cases. Well, then bam, send those to CaptureNow and have CaptureNow pick it up. So those are the many, and there will be many, many more, many use cases of CaptureNow. But right now, I'm going to do what everyone says you should never do, and that's a demo with all of you live. Now, if something goes wrong, I'm going to blame it on something out of my control, and we'll figure it out. I'll send an apology note later, but I want to give you a sense, and I'll make it pretty quick, of how this works. Here we go. Putting it on speaker.
Hi, thank you for calling the CaptureNow law firm. How can we help you?
Yeah, I was in an accident, and I think I need a lawyer.
Sorry to hear about your accident. I'd be happy to help you with this. I just need to ask you a few important questions so our attorneys have all the right details. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Could you please describe how the accident happened?
Yes, I was driving on Flatbush Avenue and the light turned red, so I stopped and the other car behind me did not stop. They ended up rear-ending me.
Thank you for sharing that. Were you injured in the accident?
I was, but you know what? I'm kind of in a rush right now. And can you just maybe get my contact information and someone can give me a call back later or something?
Of course, I understand. Let me go ahead and take your contact information so our team can follow up with you. May I have your full name, please?
My name is Gary Falkowitz.
Thank you, Gary. What is the best phone number to reach you on?
917-226-4833. By the way, I'm not really sure because I've called multiple law firms. Why should I work with your law firm?
I understand you're considering your options. Our firm is dedicated to providing personalized and compassionate legal support, ensuring that you feel heard and supported throughout the process. Our attorneys have extensive experience handling cases like yours and are committed to achieving the best possible outcome for you. If you have any more questions or need further information, our team would be happy to discuss this with you when they call. Could I also have your email address so we can send you any necessary documents?
Yes, it's my full name, Gary Falkowitz at gmail.com. That's GaryFalkowitz at gmail.com.
Thank you, Gary. You should expect to hear from our team shortly. They'll be able to provide more information and answer any questions you might have. Thank you again for calling and have a great day. Goodbye.
Bye. So obviously I cut that pretty quickly by letting them know I'm in a rush, but that could go on for another minute or so and get everything that a call center representative would have received in just, I don't know, 12 minutes, right? At a fraction of the cost. So what's really important there is that there's a back and forth, right? There's some compassion, there's repeating my name. What we've realized, which is really interesting, is that we don't care whether the caller believes that's a bot or doesn't believe that that's a bot. And it will say, by the way, that it is a virtual assistant. But what we realize is that people are more open themselves up even more, knowing they're not going to be judged by a human being that isn't giving them their full attention anyway. So they share a lot of information, which obviously the law firms are loving because they're getting these comprehensive summaries from claimants. And here's the last thing I'll say about this, because I'm not a big sales pitch guy, but I'm really, what I think is really important is explaining what's going on in the world. Here's what I'll do. For those who are a part of this webinar and have any interest in even trying this CaptureNow, I want you to email me directly. That's my email address, Gary@CaptureNow.com. If you email me today, even the letters okay, or I'm in, or I want to try it, I'll make sure that you get your first 50 calls at no cost per call. That's a value of probably a couple $100 with a call center. So at no cost, just email me, Gary@CaptureNow.com. Intake is my everything. Guys, we have to get it straight. We have to be fast and we have to be decisive. So I appreciate everyone's time and having me participate. And Chris, I'll hand the ball right back over to you.
Yeah, Gary, I mean, that's fantastic. Appreciate that. And definitely that demo went off without a hitch. So congratulations there.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, one of the things I'd like to touch on, just, one of the purposes and really the impetus for this webinar is all those intake protocols that Thomas had laid out, is that we've built a essentially customized intake experience specifically for LSAs to be able to make sure that it meets all of his requirements, picks up on the very first call, shows the engagement, goes through a full intake. We can even do retention documents. So at the end, it can send out a retainer to be able to make sure that that kind of call gets a nice bow on it at the end from Google standpoint. So the real reason behind this webinar is that we've kind of built this and have it in practice at about half a dozen firms to be able to do the LSAs and have that perfect intake protocol on the back end. But with that being said, really enjoyed the webinar today. Hope everybody got a lot of great information out of it. Would love to engage with you guys either on the CaptureNow side with Gary and his information, or here's Thomas's information again. If anybody has any questions about LSAs, Thomas is the no chicken shit LSA guy. I just saw that. So I'd love the story behind that, Thomas. I'm not sure if we have time for that right now, if you'd like to share, but
it's quick. I have
no chicken shit LSA guy.
I have chickens, backyard chickens, and I was just filming like a little video one day, and I was thinking about a lot of metrics that lead generation companies and people talk about. And with LSAs, the only things that matter are how many cases you're signing and how much it costs to sign each case. And so we lovingly refer to everything else as chicken shit. And that's where it came from. So that's kind of how that thing stuck.
Even though bullshit might be bigger, it's probably easier to clean up than chicken shit. So
the chicken shit, it just hit me because I was literally scooping it out in the backyard, and I said, this is the one we're going with.
All right. Well, perfect. Love that story. And again, thank you for your time today. Thank you everyone for joining us here. Again, there's all the contact information that you need to get in contact with us. And we thank you for your attendance here. Everybody have a absolute wonderful rest of your day.
Have a great day. Thank you, guys.